Next, we're going to talk about the Pythagorean identity. And before we get into it, let's just refresh our mind on what the Pythagorean theorem is. Because if you're thinking like I'm thinking, the Pythagorean identity has to do with the Pythagorean theorem. And you are absolutely right. Remember, the Pythagorean theorem said that two legs of any right triangle added together and squared would equal the hypotenuse squared. So a squared plus b squared equaled the hypotenuse squared, or c squared. Now, notice if we go back to our unit circle where we have this angle um, intersecting or subtending the unit circle at a point, you notice that that makes our right triangle right here. And if we look at the right triangle, because we're on the coordinate plane, the base of the right triangle is x, and the height of the right triangle would be y. Can you recall what the radius of the unit circle was? Because that radius of the unit circle would be the length of our hypotenuse on our triangle. You're right, it's 1. It is 1. So if we put in the sides of the triangle into our Pythagorean theorem, what would we have? Well, we would have the two legs, or x and y squared, x squared, that base, plus y squared, the height, would equal our hypotenuse squared, or in this case, the unit circle's radius, which is 1, and we would square it. So now let's take all of that and let's simplify it. And what we're going to do is we are going to write it as an identity. Okay, so let's look down here. X squared. Remember, x on the unit circle corresponds to the cosine at any angle, or the cosine of theta. So x squared would be the cosine of theta squared, or how we'll read this is cosine squared theta, plus y squared. Remember, y squared correspond to the sine of theta. So y squared would be simplified as the sine squared of theta. And that would be equal to 1 squared. Well, we know 1 squared is just 1. So here, guys, we have another identity, which we derive from the unit circle, where the cosine squared of theta plus the sine squared of theta is equal to 1. You want to keep this in your memory because a lot of the work that we'll be doing will use this identity.